Hey, topics. I'm going to record today's lesson since there were so many conflicts with our live session in forensics, and I don't want there to be a conflict between your classes that attendance is mandatory and mine. So I'm hoping that we can come to an agreement for a new time and date that most of us can all attend. Okay, it seems right now that most of us cannot attend due to conflict, so we got to switch that up. So today's lesson is just basically more converting fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, so this first one, um, we have a car loan that's 5.5% interest rate. So first, we're going to write that as a percent, 5.5%. And using our Dr. Pepper method, we're going to move it two places to the left to convert it from a percent to a decimal. So you need to know the place values in order to now go from a decimal to a fraction. This is our tenths, hundredths, thousandths place, and so we're going to write this as 55 over 1,000. I do notice that that is a choice here, choice A, but it is really important to always reduce your fractions, okay? And in this case, this one could be reduced, and it's 11 over 200. However, that's not a choice, okay? So it says, what is it equivalent to? So it is equivalent to 55 over 1,000, and even better, 11 over 200. But seeing that that's not a choice, we'll go with answer A. All right, so this was a great problem having you utilize all those skills from lesson one. Okay, so here we go. Kathy, Carrie, and Kim raised $10, $15, $25 respectively during a fundraising drive. What percent of the money did Kathy raise? Now, percent is part out of a whole, okay? So we got to first determine the total amount. Percent, part out of whole. The total is the whole. So we find out that they raised a total of $50. Well, what's the part that Kathy raised? Kathy raised $10. So Kathy is the 10 out of 50. Okay, so that's the fraction. Now to convert a fraction to a percent, we convert it to a decimal by dividing down. And then to multiply by 100, you move it two places to the right. Two places to the right. Okay, so the percent that Kathy contributed or raised is 20%. Choice D. Okay, next up. This one looks interesting. If Keith drove 255 miles of a 500-mile trip, see that part out of whole, and his wife drove the rest of the way, what percent of the trip did his wife drive? Well, let's talk about Keith. Here's Keith. Keith drove 259 out of the 500 miles. Well, what does that leave for Kathy? Or Kathy, his wife. I just made up that name from the last one. Well, she must have driven the 241 miles, which is 241 out of 500. Okay. In total, the whole was a 500-mile trip. This is the part that Keith drove. Obviously, the remaining part is what his wife drove. Okay. So what percent of the trip did his wife drive? Well, 241 out of the 500 miles is the fraction. The decimal is we divide down, right? And then to convert it to a percent, we multiply by 100 and move the decimal point two places to the right, and we get 48.2%. Okay. There's other ways to solve this. So you can figure out the percent that Keith drove. And remember, 100% is the whole. So then you would subtract that from 100 to find out the percent that his wife drove. Two different ways to solve it. Obviously, this one's more to the point. All right. Lindsay bought fabric that was 1.85 yards long. How could this decimal measurement be written as a mixed number, an improper fraction? So I'm not sure we covered this yet. Okay. So as a mixed number, that's one whole number and a fraction. So in this case, it's 1, and then this is terminates in the hundredths place value. So to write 0.85 as a fraction, it's 85 over 100. Okay? We could reduce that. Okay? So this mixed number would be 1 and 17/20. I don't know if you remember how to write a mixed number as an improper fraction, but you start at the bottom and go around by multiplying and then adding. So 20 times 1 is 20 plus 17 is 37 over 20. So just a little review on that. Again, you do multiply and then add. Okay, so 20 times 1 plus 17. And then you keep your denominator. Alrighty, cruising through this. In a survey, 1 in 5 people said that they preferred Pepsi over Coke. Okay, so if we're trying to figure out what percent of the people preferred Pepsi, well, we're going to take that fraction, convert it to a decimal, and then multiply by 100 and move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Well, if 20% of the total population preferred Pepsi, what remaining percent preferred Coke? Well, remember 100% represents the total. Okay, so you could just say 80% because 100 minus 20 is 80, or you could just go through the whole process this way, determine 80%. I wonder if it's really that big of a divide. I doubt it. I bet it's like a 60-40. I don't know. All right. Alan bought 20 yards of fencing. He used 5.9 yards to surround his flower garden and 10.3 yards to surround his vegetable garden. Write the amount of fencing remaining as a fraction in simplest form. So first let's figure out, he bought 20 yards and let's figure out how much he used. So he used 5.9 plus 10.3. That's how much he used. Well, if you bought 20 total yards, how much is remaining? Well, 20 minus the 16.2 is the 3.8 yards. Okay, so you can use your calculator for this, all right? And if you type in, I have my calculator here, but I don't have it to present on the screen. If you type in on your calculator the alpha y and then hit number 4 down, it turns a fraction into a decimal or a decimal into a fraction. I'm wondering if you don't have that function, if there's another way. I think there is, like math, enter, enter, or something like that. So all you have to do is type in 3.8 and hit that button, alpha y4, and you get 19/5. I'm going to play around with it just to see if there's... Yes. So if you just go 3.8 and then hit math, enter, enter, that's the same thing as alpha y4. So in case you don't have that feature, if you have an older calculator, I'll write that down here. And what's nice is it also simplifies it for you. So, okay, next up, May is writing 4.28 as a mixed number. Find her mistake and correct it. Okay, so what do you see here? 4.28, she says, is equal to 4 and 28 over 1,000. Well, first let's talk about, where does the 8 terminate? What place value is that? Tenths, hundredths, not thousands. Okay, so this is 28 hundredths, not thousandths. So this should be 4 and 28 over 100. Okay, now let's continue and reduce that. 28 over 100 reduces to 7 over 25. So that's our mixed number, 4 and 7 over 25. I think, let's see what's next. How many more slides do we have? Wow, a lot. Okay. What fraction of the movie rentals were horror movies? Write the fraction in reduced form. Okay, so here's horror movies right here. That's 5%. Percent is out of 100. Okay, so we can do 5 out of 100 and then reduce that 5 out of 100. You can use that math enter trick as well. That reduces the fractions for you. What fraction of the movie rentals were action or comedy? Write the fraction in reduced form. Okay, so we have 35% for action. Comedy is going to be 45%. Okay, so together that's about 80%. And so 80 out of 100 reduces to about 4/5 were action or comedy. Now that sounds about right. Love myself some comedy. Okay. The table shows the ingredients of an Italian sandwich. Okay, what fraction of a pound is each ingredient? Express the fractions in reduced form. So let's talk about meat. How do I write that as that pound, 0.35 pounds, as a fraction? That terminates in the hundredths place value, so it's 35 over 100, and that reduces to 7 over 20. Vegetables, 15 out of 100, which reduces to 3/20. Secret sauce, interesting, is 5 out of 100, which is 1/20. And then the bread is also 1/20. Okay. How much more meat is in the sandwich than vegetables? Okay, so how much more meat is in the sandwich than vegetables? Let me go back up here. All right, but let's do it as a fraction. We have 7 over 20, okay, is our meat, minus 3 out of 20, which is our vegetables. Okay, so that's 4 out of 20, which reduces to 1/5 of a pound. If you want to go ahead and do it the decimal way, you'll just have to convert it back to a fraction at the end. So 2 different ways. What is the total weight of the Italian sandwich? Right as a decimal, then fraction in reduced form. So we're going to add up all of that weight. We get 12 out of 20, which is 3/5 of a pound. So as a decimal, let me drag this over here, get myself out of the way. We get 0.60 pounds, which is also 3/5 of a pound. Okay. All right, we got 2 more problems here. All right. Chase shaded 0.25 of the triangular design below. So if I was going to read this correctly, it would be 25 out of 100 or 25%. So what fraction would represent the shaded part of the design? Well, first you want to count all of the triangles, and there are 16 triangles. Okay, so there's 1 here. Okay, 2, 3, and then I could flip this over and there would be 4. Okay, do you see how I can break this into 4? 4, 16, right? And each of these 4 triangles, there's 4 little mini triangles. Okay, that would be a quarter or 25%. Okay. Last but not least, select the best answer. Which of the following statements is not true? So let's just go through these and do each of them. Is this true? Is 0.6 3/5? Well, 3/5, 3 divided by 5 is 0.6. So this is true. 0.6 does equal 0.6. I could have changed this decimal to 6/10 and then reduced it to 3/5. Number 2, let's do 1 divided by 8. That's also 0.125, so that one's true. This one, we would multiply 100 by 2 to get 200 and add 1, so we get 201 over 200, which would not be equivalent. Or we could write this as 2.01, which is the same thing as 1/100th. And then we could use that same trick here. Okay, and we find that that does equal each other. So the one that is not correct is number 3. Just a little review with mixed numbers and proper fractions. That's probably been a while since you touched on that. All right, guys, be in touch.